a really strong bias on my part about, I think treatment is tremendously important. I am very solid in science-based diagnosis and assessment and treatment. But I still believe the way that we solve the mental health crisis in America is to provide a bigger vision for what makes people well, and when they're showing signs of illness, to help them be well beyond just trying to treat their illnesses. So we're going to talk about current controversies that regarding managed care and accountability, public health policy, and how it impacts our careers, political applications, practical applications, and political ones as well. You have already had classes to talk to you and teach you about doing assessments and treatment planning and those kinds of things. But this is really a course not to reteach you those things, but really for us to revisit them in a whole package in preparation for you to go out into the field with them. So case conceptualization, documentation, and then other roles. What are the different roles that counselors can play in the community? The role for consultation as well as clinical supervision. So I'm going to let you read the learning objectives on your own and not read them all to you. I don't think that's the guts of what you really want to hear from me. You know by now that your required text is Young and Cashwell, Elements of Effective Practice. It's an older book, but it was written right after KCREP revised their standards. And so the KCREP standards have just been revised in 2024. And those 2020, the Cashwells and Young will revise their book now that there's a new set of standards. But I've made some crosswalks between the new standards in terms of the content that we're going to do. You are encouraged to read the chapters. You've been encouraged to read the chapters of all of the textbooks that you've gotten so far in this year. I will not ask for a show of hands of how many people have read every single page on those chapters. As a graduate student and as a faculty member, I realize the challenge that really ensues. I am particularly interested that you are familiar with the book. And if you were going to consider keeping your textbooks from graduate school, this would be one that I would highly recommend, and use it as a reference manual, because things are going to come up in your practice that you're going to need to know from more of a practice standpoint, not a clinical standpoint. And this is a great reference of the real overview of the field. So I also want to support inclusivity of learning. And so most of the chapters that are assigned, not the whole book is not assigned, but most of the chapters will have a recorded PowerPoint lecture where I outline and give some dialogue about the things I think are really significant about it. You can read the chapters, you can watch the lectures. That's the gold standard. But truthfully, if you do one or the other, you'll probably do just fine. Because there will be other supplemental materials that will be included as well. We do require Canvas engagement and participation. There will be additional readings and videos that are posted from non-textbook sources. So just make sure that you are up on your Canvas and staying connected to it. This is your long course, obviously, for the summer, but at 12 weeks, it's still a short course. Most of your courses are 16. So we're still a little bit heavier than your regular semesters. Module 1 is unveiling even as we speak, but it will, we did the introductions in the very first week, and then now it's time to get into a little bit of the guts. The announcement feature is how I will communicate with the class as a whole. Make sure you can get your Canvas messages, but for one-on-one communication with me, as I said, please use your email. If you have not used Flipgrid, you probably have, I would guess by now, but if you haven't, Flipgrid is a third-party program, and I've given you the instructions to how to log in with Microsoft. What will happen is you'll have a discussion post, and the instructions in the discussion post will be in the Canvas module. You have a choice. You can reply to that as a traditional discussion and write your answer. But for some folks, it's more real, authentic for them to be able to talk it through. So I want you to have the opportunity to talk it through if that's what works for you. You can also reply to people with a video lecture. Just make sure you post it it's not just over in Flipgrid, you post it in the discussion, in your discussion boards as well. But Flipgrid's just an alternative. So course workload, I'm required to tell you that this course takes 7,200 minutes, so 7,200 minutes of instruction. As this is a distance learning course, that there isn't time to count face-to-face interaction. You don't have face-to-face interaction. Now, one of the ways the university can take a look at the number of hours of instruction or the engagement is how much time you spend in Canvas, but that's not even really a good mark for that. The readings, the modules, the activities, the assignments, everything is really designed for you to have about 10 and a half hours per week of instruction. If you're spending a lot less than that, then I'd love for us to talk. If you're spending a lot more than that, I really would love for us to talk, and let's see if we can find a way to be more efficient about it. So attendance, engagement, expectations. This is an online distance learning class, so there aren't any classes you have to attend. I am going to have them because I need to record modules for you. And so you're welcome to come to anything that I'm doing live, and you have the schedule for that Mondays at 5:15. Anybody that does show up gets 2 extra credit points for showing up live. If you attended all 5 of them, then that's 10% of your grade. So you could make a pretty good miss on something and be able to make 10% of your grade up if you needed to. Unfortunately, there isn't any way to do it at the very last second. So it's one of those things, you either do it or you don't. I do try to build some places into the course because life happens. You have other courses that you're taking, you have things that happen in life. We talked about the course format. Online lectures, reading, small group discussions. You will go into small groups. And those small groups will be a place where you have your discussions. And then you'll also be doing a project with the small group of doing a site visit, which I'll talk about in a second. My recommendation to you about the modules, they're roughly 2 weeks long. I think one's 3 weeks, one's 1 week, but they're roughly about a 2-week span. What I would highly suggest is get into that module as soon as it's released so you know what your work plan is. Don't wait till the last week to open the module. It could be one of those that sneaks up on you. Critical thinking, creative thinking, your ideas, your stories, your thoughts, your opinions, all of that is welcome. This is not a class about regurgitation of information. I'm an experiential teacher and an experiential learner. So I think learning by doing is really an important component. Real world engagement, you'll find that your assignments are, for the most part, based in real world engagement. And you will be doing a role play, sort of, with your peers. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But my goal is for you to enjoy the process, be engaged with the material, with me, and with each other. This is intended to be a place for you to tie all of the things together, wind you up, and get ready to send you into practicum. So the curriculum is designed that way, but also our engagements. I'm going to let you read all the course policies for yourself. You know, the professionalism, student conduct, writing from the APA 7th edition. I'm sure you have written papers now to the point that you are tired of it. For me, I just want to make a point. I have it in bold text. When you submit something in a paper format, and there aren't a lot of them, please make sure it's well organized and that you use appropriate headings and subheadings. The subheadings make or break a paper, even if your work is really good. If you don't have it organized so that your thoughts are together in subheadings and leads your reader from an introduction through the meat that makes sense to a conclusion, then you could have wonderful writing, but it gets kind of lost and it's hard to follow. Use of technology. Well, we wouldn't be having this course if we didn't make good use of technology. However, AI is a thing. We are all learning to live with it. And it's important. It's fine. We want you to use it. I use it. We should all use it. But use it effectively, and don't use it to skirt any requirements. Not that I'm saying any of you would, but um, because in the event that it were to happen, I do have to deal with it. So um, I used the analogy in the syllabus. Would you rather have artificial sweetener, or would you rather have real sugar or agave or honey or maple in your dessert? Well, most of us would want to have the real thing for something if we have a sweet tooth. Artificial intelligence is great, but it is not a replacement for the authentic representation of what you've learned. So in the event that we have an issue, I can request an annotated bibliography, copies of your references, and or documentation where you got your references. I don't do anything stealth. If I'm concerned or have any questions, I'll send you an email, ask for us to talk, and we'll talk about it. But I did want to give you the prep on that. Academic integrity, you can read that. If you don't know what plagiarism is, I've given you lots of resources to explore that. And if you have any questions, certainly let me know. If in doubt, consult. Let me know, and we'll talk about it. I've tried to make the due dates easy for this course with your assignments. Everything closes on a Sunday and opens on a Monday, with the exception of the last week. So I'll let you read the course policies from here. I do want to point out number 11, and that is ethics and fitness to practice. And part of my responsibility as a counselor educator is to hold the expectations for conduct and comportment. So essentially how we are in the world is how we will be in our practices. And what you'll find, especially in the engagement in this course and in your practicum and internship process, is that becoming a mental health professional is not about what you learn. You have to learn there's a lot of different things, and you have to apply a lot of those different things, but it really is about becoming that identity. The professional identity of a mental health professional it's a sub identity to your basic personality, your whole person. So professional identity and becoming a person who does counseling versus becoming the counselor is something we all have to be molded and formed into that counseling person. And graduate school is certainly a part of that. The early years of practice are part of that, but I think we also are always developing. So if there are some concerns or any issues, just make sure I know by now you've studied the Code of Ethics and the multicultural and social justice counseling competency. So I wanted to point those out. Evaluation, A's, B pluses, B's. Don't usually deal with C's and anything below in graduate school, but we can if we have to. But now the moment you have all been waiting for. What the heck am I going to have to do? 4 assignments. It's a 100-point class. They're 25 points per assignment. The first one's probably my favorite. You will get a small group. I am going to allow you to choose your small group. So this evening, by tomorrow morning, you'll have a small group sign up option. When you sign up for that small group, then that will be a group that you do some discussion boards with, but most importantly, your biggest assignment in that small group is actually excuse me, the agency site survey and visitation presentation. So it's a big product. So make sure when you choose your group that your schedules find out who has good schedules that work for you, that you could work together. Most of the work can be done by a distance in whatever time frame works for you. But it does require a site visit. So one of the things you will do is you'll gather some data and do some work in advance, but then ultimately you'll go to a place and conduct some interviews and get a tour. And there's a template for gathering data on community mental health agencies that you'll use. Purpose of the exercise is it's got a number of different purposes. One of them is for you to gain some insight on what different roles that mental health counselors can serve in post-graduation. Another one is to get the practice of consultation, although you're not specifically doing a consultation for this agency, but hypothetically speaking, if an agency were struggling, and obviously as a first-year student, almost second-year student, you're probably not going to get called on to solve major agency problems, but you would be very surprised at how quickly, once you graduate and you start practicing at the level of excellence that you all aspire to, you could get called on to help agencies a lot sooner than you think you'll be ready for. So the process of when an agency, an individual counselor, it doesn't even have to be a counseling agency. It could be any sort of healthcare entity or child welfare or social service agency, is struggling to provide the services or have the quality of services that they want to have. The counselors are often called on, or you may be working with an agency that you see has some challenges. So the purpose of this exercise is to allow you to develop a system of objective exploration. The first place you'll probably use these skills is when you're looking for your position and where you want to hang your hat. You will have choices of where you go to work, and you're going to want to know all that you can know about the agency to make sure it's a good fit for you. So this is also a kind of a little primer for being able to interview your potential employers in the future. It's not just an interview for you, it's an interview for you to them as well. You'll conduct your site visit, put together a 15 to 20 slide point presentation, and then you will present that recorded, and it'll go to the entire class. Now, this has one caveat that goes with it. Once it's graded and it's reviewed, you have an opportunity to edit it if it needs any editing. And it's completely up to your group. But if you are willing and would like to share it, we will absolutely share it with the agency. When I've done this exercise before, the agencies love participating in it because they like for students to come and take a look. They like to have the opportunity to share who and what they are in the world. But they always want to know, well, what did you find out? What did you think? They want to know what they know what they think they're presenting to the world, but they want to know what you saw. So if you're willing to let the agencies have your work and to take this in this similar way that you would if it was a consulting assessment, then we would love to share it with the agencies and let them hear what you think about them and what your experience of them was. There's two benefits to that. One is it's the relationship with the agency, but the other benefit with it is if you happen to like that agency and you want to do business with them, or you want to get referrals from them, or whatever relationship you want to have with them, then they'll remember you for sure. So that's probably the most complicated one. The next one is very simple. And it's, you can use the Flipgrid or you can write it out, it matters not. But essentially, the Wednesday before the module will close, all modules will close on a specific Sunday. Not every Sunday, the modules last for multiple weeks. But if the module is going to close on a Sunday, the Wednesday before that, you make a summary post. I'll have some prompts. But essentially what you are doing with that post is to discuss in the small group what you get out of that particular module. There will be some guiding questions, but what we're looking for is comprehension of the reading, the supplemental materials, your active engagement in your small group, and the depth of that conversation. I will be in those discussion posts with you, with each small group around those end of the module reflections. So that's a place where, in a small group scenario, you can engage with me around the material and get clarification on anything that you didn't understand or didn't agree with, quite frankly, or something you want to have a deeper conversation. We can do that online, or we can do that live. That's kind of the dependence upon what your group really wants to do. But then you will do this a written reflection of that. And those happen at the end of every module. So there are 5 of those, and you will have 5 points apiece. So that's 25 points. That's a quarter of your grade. You have practiced case conceptualization and treatment planning and assessments, I know, in the classes that you've taken so far. So this is a place to put it together. We are going to put a holistic spin on it. I was very excited in reading all your introductions at how many of you are so socially conscious and so fired up to be the good in the world. And so this template that I'm going to give you for this particular exercise will allow you to take a biopsychosocial spiritual assessment. And we'll talk about conceptualizing a case, not just from an illness model, but from a wellness model, and some sorts of objective assessments you might choose to use because you want to do the wellness model. Now, here's the caveat about this assessment. It's not really going to be a role play. It's not for you to do an evaluation of your peer, but what we're going to ask you to do is to work with a partner in this class. And you, when you're writing the report for yourself, for the report that you'll turn in for your case conceptualization and treatment plan, you will de-identify the data. So when I read your clinical work product, I don't want to know who you were talking to. So you want to make sure you de-identify the data to the point that it will not be recognizable for me as to who the student might be, but it would be somebody in your class. Now, we earlier in the case, the class policies, you will have seen where we talk about confidentiality. Nobody is expected to disclose anything that you're not ready to disclose. It doesn't require you to be more vulnerable than you really want to be. And I said, this is not a clinical assessment. However, the point of doing the biopsychosocial spiritual assessment is really from the point of personal growth and development, your counselor self-identity. So the question's going to be to do your interviews from the perspective of who is this person, biologically, psychologically, socially, emotionally, spiritually. Who is this person at whatever level they wish to share, which does not need to be everything, but whatever they want to share with you about who they are in those domains. So you can gather that information and then explore. There's a measure that I'm going to give you to use called the flourishing assessment, which is a great evaluative tool to help people identify for themselves, where are they flourishing and where are they languishing. If we are flourishing, then we are on the side of health and wellness. If we are languishing, then we're on the side of illness or developing illness if we haven't gotten it yet. So all that's going to get wrapped up together, and you'll have a framework to do a case conceptualization, and then you and the peer that you're working with will develop an action plan. So it's the process of assessment, it's the process of conceptualization. There isn't going to be diagnosis because we're not diagnosing, but in terms of planning, that's what we're looking for, is the ability to put all this together. And the burden on securing and maintaining confidentiality lies with the counselor in training. So that's why I don't want to know who you're talking to. And product will be de-identified when it comes to me. So if there's questions about that or any concerns about that, we can talk about that in greater detail, and there'll be more along that when that module comes up. And then the last piece of it is a final course integration and a reflection assignment. There will be a whole set of instructions, or a rubric basically that goes along with it. But essentially, you're going to write a letter or create a video to your future counselor self. And you'll demonstrate your ability to integrate your learning from the course, your perspectives on practice as a mental health professional in the real community, your aspirations for change. It's not a fluff outline. It's intended to demonstrate real integration of the material from this particular course. What you'll find about my grading is I am going to, this is what I think about grading in general. Grading is absolutely important. I need to be able to put a numerical value to what you do, but I'm also incredibly realistic that the difference between a 92.5 and a 94.5 says roughly 0. Quality, content, value, those things are difficult to quantify with real numbers. Objectively, it needs to contain A, B, and C. It will contain A, B, and C, or it won't contain A, B, and C. Those are things that I'm more interested in identifying. I am not, my students will always tell you, I am not a quote hard grader. I'm not looking for you to jump through magical hoops in order to be competitive. That there are only so many A's given out. My greatest joy is when all of my students have the grades they want. You'll get the grade you want out of this class. If you're struggling to get the grade you want out of this class, then I want to hear from you, because I want to make sure that we can help you get what you need to get the grade that you want out of this class. Detailed rubrics will come with all of these. So for assignments, I think I don't like the term beating the dead horse. That goes against my animal ethics, so I won't say that, but I think I've probably belabored that point enough. So what are the modules? We're in one, course orientation and introduction. We'll review the syllabus, this is it. And then there will be a video released soon, later today, on the history of the evolution of counseling, and then a discussion about legal and ethical issues. And then the assignment will be released to establish your site visits. And then we will call Module 1 done. And Module 1 lasts until next Sunday. So this recording will be available today, which is Monday, May the 20th, and it'll be accessible to you ongoing. And then the recorded lecture on the chapters 1 and 2 will be available tonight as well. And we cover Module 1. Module 2 is coming right behind, which is advocacy and social justice. It also only has a couple of chapters in it. This is a place where we're going to talk about private versus public practice. I'm not an anti-private practitioner. I have been in private practice for many years. My personal way of working through that dynamic was to always make sure that I saved some space in my world to work in the public sector. And then I saved space in my world to work in the private sector, somewhat for my own peace of mind and sanity, but also because fiscally, if I made enough money in private practice, that let me do an awful lot of things in public practice. And it all balanced out in the end. But everybody has to work their own process of that. So we're going to talk about advocacy and social justice and our role relative to that. The other thing that you're going to get is a piece on ecological perspectives and models that are useful in counseling. Usually the ecological perspectives are really more thought of them from a social work standpoint, but we're going to address them here because you are gotten a lot of information. You're going to continue to get information about working with individuals or families or groups, but understanding the dynamics of the micro, the meso, and the macro systems that people live and work in, and that you live and work in, And how those things are all interplayed together, I think, is something that we can expand more on and borrow from our friends in social work. And then local, state, national policy is our module 2. That takes you all the way up through the end of, that takes you up through the middle of June. And then module 3, which is clinical processes, that's all of module 3 is really focused on that particular, what you need to do for the particular assignment. Please don't have a heart attack, because that particular module has 5 chapters in it. It is not expected for you to read word for word all those 5 chapters, and just unless you just feel that you need to do it. It's that the information for the systemic review of the biopsychosocial assessment, diagnosis, treatment planning, documentation, clinical supervision, and consultation is all spread over a number of chapters. You've all heard of those things before. It's not new knowledge, but it's referenced material that's being woven back together again. So that's really where the section that I meant specifically about utilizing this textbook as a reference piece of material. And then module 4, organizational change theory and implementation science. It's kind of my jam. Most of the times, well, actually, in some of the stories I got from you, that part of the way you got into this field was having experiences in mental health treatment that didn't go the way that you felt like they needed to go, or that didn't go at all, that didn't happen, or you've seen the places where the system has really let you or other people down. So that's going to be part of what we deal with in this field. And we can be or feel powerless to do anything about it, or we can understand organizational change theory and how to make change in the world. So I call module 4 the place where I hope to give you wings to your passion to really make real changes in this world by delivering a method in which change can happen in a big way. Healthcare and education are the 2 systems where knowledge generally comes from. They're also the most difficult to get to change. Module 5, integrated and integrative healthcare, so counselor wellness, self-care, prevention, burnout, but also how to use what moves you in your practice, flourishing versus surviving for yourself as well as for your clients. And then the last module is only a week long, and that's crisis and disaster prevention and response. There could be an entire course or 2 courses on the big picture of disaster relief, crisis prevention, and crisis response. So this is going to be a touchstone for you to get an overview of what's actually available, and some simple models that are available to you, like mental health first aid. Want to make sure you know what the Red Cross Mental Health Disaster Response Team is and how you can participate in that at some point that you want to. I also have a very cool guest lecture from the FBI's community outreach specialist here in Florida. And there's an entire movement to engage community mental health providers in understanding our role in the prevention of mass shootings and in domestic terror. We're tired of saying thoughts and prayers when an elementary school is ravaged. We're not responsible for it, but we absolutely can do some things differently and not feel like our hands are tied and not able to have an impact where we see things. So that's it. That's the wrap on this particular course. I'm excited about it. I hope that you are too. If you went to sleep during my discussion of the syllabus, then maybe it's a little bit too much, but we'll figure it out. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to email me, text me, reach out, and we'll be happy to talk about it. I hope you're as excited about it as I am, and we will see you soon. Take care.